Hello. We're not doing arms today. I tried to find a quiet place, but I'm still hearing drilling and banging. Anyway, today we are going to look at transverse sections or axial sections through the abdomen as CT images. So we're going to do some radiology. And there are two good reasons for this. The obvious one is so you can recognize anatomical structures on CT images. But the other really good one is to make your brain do a little bit of work, to make you think about the 3D anatomical structures that you may know about and see if you can work out what that circle is, what that blob is, what that smudge is on the CT image, right? Because by doing that little bit of work, you're making your brain do a bit of spatial work and recall some things and think about something in a different way. And doing a little bit of work helps retention, helps you remember it, also helps you work it out. You know, if you have to look at a radiograph in the future and try to suss out what's what. Anyway, I got one of these so we can familiarize ourselves with what's in there. There's a lot in there. And I got a laptop and we'll scroll. You'll see. You'll see. All right, so have a look at this. So this is a scrollable stack of images at, I think, about 3 millimeters, 3 millimeter intervals. You can see the yellow bar here shows us the level that this image is at. And as I scroll down, we can see a number of organs and blood vessels and bones and muscles and stuff. Okay, so a CT, a computed tomography image, is created by you send an X-ray source around the body, which is detected on the opposite side. You move it around, take lots of images, send that to a computer, and the computer builds up, you know, a three-dimensional image of the inside of the body. Very handy, very cool. I would love to have this done to myself, but I would not like the radiation. And it gives us these images. So you need to consider that as it's X-ray based, things that are radio opaque, like bone, are bright. They're white because the X-rays pass through them with great difficulty or don't pass through them. And then softer tissues are various shades of grey depending upon how many X-rays can pass through them. And then we see black spaces like this. These are the lungs. So black indicates radio transparent. It's air. X-rays can pass through that very easily. And you can see, you'll probably get an idea now that we've got some brighter things, some brighter spots, some darker spaces. Our job then as we scroll down here is to try to work out what all of these things are. This scrollable image stack is in the public domain. It's on Wikimedia Commons. I'll put a link below so you can do this. You can scroll through these same images, see if you can recognize these structures, okay? Of course, if you're watching this a long time in the future, that link might have died. Not much I can do about that. But very cool that this has been made available. I think we should approach this by looking at the major blood vessels first. For a couple of reasons. One of them, blood vessels are really important. They supply all the organs. But if we look at the blood vessels first, if I take out these organs, and there are a lot of organs in here, we're going to have to try and identify as many of these as possible. If I take these out, you can see the descending aorta here. Now, if we look at these big blood vessels and we follow them up and down as we scroll up and down, we can look for branches. And if we follow those branches to see where they go, we'll probably find many of the organs, all right? And then we'll try and work out what the other stuff is that we haven't found. Anyway, so here's the aorta. So the diaphragm is up here. Notice how it's nice and curved. And the aorta is appearing through a gap between these two legs, the crura of the diaphragm. So the abdominal aorta descends, and it ends by dividing into two common iliac arteries that continue to descend, but they're running a little bit more anterior now. And they divide on both sides into an internal iliac artery that goes into the pelvis and an external iliac artery that continues down into the upper limb. right? So remember that, we're going to watch out for all of that. There are some notable branches. There are 3 anterior branches of the abdominal aorta: the celiac trunk, the superior mesenteric artery, and the inferior mesenteric artery. Look, this is the inferior vena cava. It forms from similar veins, and it sends off a couple of renal veins. And look, it's over to the right, the aorta is over to the left. This renal vein is passing across to the kidney, just inferior to this superior mesenteric artery here. Okay, these little veins we probably won't care about too much, otherwise we'll be here all week. But that's what we're looking for. Okay, right, can we find any of that? So, I guess if we start at the top, right. So now we're in the thorax. You can see the air spaces of the lungs as we scroll down, as we go through the diaphragm. Now, you've got to remember that the way this image is presented, this transverse section, this is posterior. You can see the vertebrae here at the back. This is the thing the person's led on. This is the left side of the person, and this is the right side of the person. So this is anterior, this is posterior, this is left, and this is right. That means that their feet are coming out of the page. The feet are coming out of the screen towards you, and their head is going into the screen or page, if you see what I mean. So as I scroll down, we scroll down towards the feet, and we come out of the screen. And this is very important because left and right is very important, but we're also asymmetrical. This great big thing here, I know I wasn't going to talk about organs yet, but this great big thing, the elephant in the room, is the liver. And the liver is on the right side. And because we're looking at blood vessels first, the aorta is a little to the left. So it's very posterior, it's up against the vertebral body here, but it's a little bit to the left side. All right. Keep an eye on that. So you've got to remember that this is a large blood vessel. If you cut a section through it, it looks like a circle. So let's follow that circle down as we scroll down. We're into the abdomen. We can see the diaphragm there. You can kind of get an idea there of the aorta passing through that gap at the back of the diaphragm. Oh, did you see what happened there? And then as we keep going, something else happened there, and then, ooh, it's changed again. So we have a number of changes. I'm scrolling up now. We have a number of changes going on. Okay, so let's do the obvious one first. So the aorta then, we can see it descends, gives off a branch here, descends, ooh, another branch here, ooh, and then that, and that, 2 more branches, diving off somewhere, but we still have our aorta there, our abdominal aorta. As we keep descending though, we can see it giving off a couple of posterior branches, but look, that's the big one. We go from the aorta to 2 blood vessels. So these must be the common iliac arteries, the left and the right common iliac arteries. And if we keep going down and follow them, they're not gonna go very far before, there we go, before they divide again. So the right one is already dividing here and here. Keep an eye on the left one, there it goes. The left one, the left common iliac artery, is becoming the external and internal iliac arteries. I'm going to scroll back up. Okay, so keep an eye on these 2. So our common iliac arteries, keep an eye on them as I scroll down and watch where they go. So the external iliac arteries are going to run anteriorly, and scrolling back up, the internal iliac arteries, they're going quite posteriorly, aren't they, to get into the pelvis. And we'll save the pelvis for another day, but those are going to supply blood to the pelvic structures. If I keep going down, so I'm scrolling up, scrolling down, 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 they're going to become the femoral arteries and go to the upper limb. Oh, more branches. So that's pretty cool. We can see the aorta become the common iliac arteries and the internal and external iliac arteries. And you see how that 3-dimensional thing is so important, that they go kind of, they're not just going ring, but they're also running anteriorly and posteriorly and stuff like that. Okay, because scrolling up and down like this is easier. If you're just given a section, it can be a lot harder. Right, let's go back to the top. It is important to know what level you're at, and you can partly do that by the things that are around it. Okay, so we're going back up to the top. Right, we've got our nice round abdominal aorta. It's passing through the diaphragm, and it's giving off a branch here. This is the first anterior branch of the aorta. So what is that first abdominal branch, that first anterior branch of the aorta? That is the celiac trunk, and that is where we see it. As soon as it pops off, as soon as the aorta goes through the diaphragm. And then the second branch is not very far away. It's just a few sections down. And that's what we see here. So there's the first branch. Scrolling down, there's the second branch. So this is the superior mesenteric artery. How can I possibly be so confident that that's the superior mesenteric artery? Well, if we keep scrolling down, I see this thing going whoosh across here. And if we look at the aorta, right, if we look at the aorta and scroll down a little way, we get a whoosh and a whoosh. We get two arteries branching off from the aorta. If we follow these, where do they go? Let's go in here and here. What is this and what is this? These are the kidneys. So if I scroll back up again, those branches coming from the aorta, they're lateral branches, big branches, which is why they're nice to identify. These are the renal arteries. And the renal arteries are posterior to the renal veins. So this thing I see here, so we have the aorta, scrolling down, there's the superior mesenteric artery, scrolling down, we see this blood vessel going whoosh, and look, it's going from the right side, whoosh, across to the left, and it's a little less distinct, isn't it, than these blood vessels, but this is the left renal vein. It has to run further, because it has to run from the inferior vena cava that's on the right, across the aorta, to get to, boom, boom, you see it going? Still see it? Keep your eye on it, keep your eye on it. There it goes to the kidney. Whoosh, in it goes. So this is the left renal vein. All right, so look on here, this is what we're seeing, look. Celiac trunk, superior mesenteric artery, there's the inferior vena cava, there's the left renal vein running across here, so the superior mesenteric artery will overlap that. There's the right renal vein here. So the renal veins are anterior to the renal arteries and anterior to the aorta. That's what we're looking at. So how about we look for the inferior vena cava then? So we have to look out for the portal vein. The inferior vena cava is different to the aorta. Remember that the inferior mesenteric vein, the superior mesenteric vein, and the splenic vein all come together to form the portal vein that runs to the liver. So the blood from the GI tract, the gastrointestinal tract, runs to the liver through those blood vessels, which means that our organisation is going to look different on here, right? Okay, so don't mix up the inferior vena cava with the portal vein. So again, if we go down inferiorly, it's probably easier to go that away, right? Are you seeing anything? Are you seeing anything? So did you see that shape there? So if I go from, so here's a reasonable circle here. That's a pretty big blood vessel. And it kind of disappears a little bit with the soft tissues around it. But if I scroll down, so it's on the right side. If I scroll, can you see how it's starting to divide? And look, this is the same level that the aorta is dividing into common iliac arteries. So this is the inferior vena cava, scrolling down, dividing into left and right common iliac veins. Or we might think of it the other way around. Those are the two common iliac veins coming together to form the inferior vena cava, because we really should think about the direction of blood flow. But if I descend then, so if we look at these two, as I descend, we should, there we go, bump, bump. We should see, there we go, we should see the common iliac veins separating into the internal and external iliac veins. And the internal iliac veins are going to run into the pelvis, whereas the external iliac veins are going to run with the external iliac arteries down towards the lower limb. Artery, vein, artery, vein. Okay, as we scroll up, watch those blood vessels all come together again. Up, up, up. So we can see the sacrum, the ilium, so the pelvis, bones. Sorry, I took your eye off it, didn't I? Follow these up and these up. So the aorta is nice and bright. The inferior vena cava is not so bright. But keep watching it as we go up. We're starting to see some, there we go, some links to the kidneys there. It's getting really indistinct now. And at this point it's becoming surrounded by the liver. The liver surrounds it, and the liver is going to drain its blood into the inferior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava is going to pass superiorly. Oh, that's quite good, isn't it? You see the veins drain into the inferior vena cava, which is then going to pass through the diaphragm and into the right side of the heart. Oops. So there's the inferior vena cava. All right, what about that mysterious portal vein then? Tricky. Now, the portal vein is going to the liver as well, right? Ding, 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 ding. I can see it. Can you see it? This guy here. Really tricky. Really tricky. So as I said, we've got the inferior mesenteric vein, superior mesenteric vein and splenic vein coming together in some configuration to form the portal vein. And I won't look for the, see we've got lots of vessels around here. I'm not going to look for and identify I'm not going to look for and identify all of those veins, but the distinguishing feature that we're looking for is a large vessel. I don't know, the radiologist will probably be able to explain this to you in a much better way. They probably recognise it in a different way. I'm just a simple anatomist. But I'm looking for this blood vessel running across to the liver here. Bump. And that's the portal vein. So we're at the inferior part of the liver here, scrolling up, more liver, thick part of the liver, so the hilum of the liver is around here. Bump. We do have a lot of structures going to the liver actually, but this is quite a big blood vessel. Alright, so the hepatic portal vein carrying blood from the gastrointestinal tract into the liver. Tricky on these images. The portal vein is running within the free edge of the lesser omentum, so it's running from the stomach and the liver are attached to each other by the lesser omentum. The portal veins running from there to there. So this gassy space here, so you can see this gassy space, so we're really high up now, we're right up against the diaphragm, and we're very anterior. So this is part of the stomach, and as we descend, very stomachy. And then we start getting into the duodenum and other parts of the small intestine. But this here, so look, boom, from here, the other vessels or the other structures we've got running across would be the hepatic arteries, the common and proper hepatic arteries. We've got the bile duct running from the gallbladder and that sort of thing. But this is a blood vessel. It's quite a bit bigger than those other structures. It's not as bright as some of the arteries that we're seeing there. So that's why I'm calling that as portal vein, right? And also, as I was saying, don't mix up the inferior vena cava ascending with the portal vein, all right? So watch out for that. Okay, so that's the major blood vessels that I'm probably willing to point out on here without spending even longer on it than we already have, and some concepts there. What about organs then? Well, we've seen the kidneys here, left and right kidneys, and if I start high, so look, there we go, we can see the left kidney as I scroll down, and then we see the right kidney, so we can see that the right kidney is more inferior than the left kidney, probably because the liver is taking up a lot of space there. And as I scroll down, we're seeing it's very, very kidney-y, right? Do you agree with me that that's very kidney-y, kidney-shaped? It's very posterior. It's up against these muscles. It's got kidney written all over it, right? And so the left one has disappeared now as I scroll down, and there's the right one about to disappear. And we're seeing some spaces here of the large bowel. Kidney, kidney, posterior, up against these big muscles, right? Posterior. Why am I harping on about this? Well, as I scroll up, what's this here that's starting to appear? What's this here? Oh, right, so, okay. This is just something that when we're looking at cadavers and what have you, students often mistake with a kidney. This is the spleen. So this is left, very left, lateral, a little bit posterior. There's the kidney. But we've got spleen, kidney, kidney. I scroll up, stomach, spleen, scroll down, kidney, kidney. Okay? So I just wanted to point out the difference between the locations of the spleen and the kidneys. Now, if we're really clever, on the superior pole of each kidney is the adrenal gland or suprarenal gland. So if we look at the left kidney, we can see we're at the hilum now because we've got blood vessels going in and out. If I scroll up, 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 ooh. We're at the superior pole of the kidney. Can you see this here? It doesn't last very long as I scroll down and up. But that will be the adrenal gland because the adrenal glands are actually a little bit more medial. Look. Boom, boom, we can see that here. So we're at this level. So the adrenal gland is this soft tissue here. Often if you get a really good one, it does look a little bit triangular. If we scroll down, look at the right kidney. So scroll up, up, up. Oh, is it this bit here? Now, what organ lies between the stomach and the kidney? What organ pushes into the spleen? So kidney here, stomach here, spleen here. What's this here? What's this organ lying posterior to the stomach, pushing into the spleen there? Scrolling up, scrolling down. This is the pancreas. This is where the pancreas lies. This is where we would expect to find it. So the pancreas pushes into the spleen. And yeah, we're seeing some of the blood vessels here. What does this look like? Does that look like a wiggly artery running towards the spleen to you, the splenic artery that's also supplying blood to the pancreas as it goes? Anyway, I said I wasn't going to do too much detail, didn't I? So liver, stomach, spleen, pancreas, kidney, vertebrae, major blood vessels. And then we've got we've got the large intestine and the small intestine. But while we're looking around here, we've got the muscles of the back here, but we've got a couple of really cool muscles in here. So the kidneys lie lateral to, watch this muscle block as we scroll down. Watch this muscle block as we scroll down. It's a really big chunk of muscle, isn't it? That is psoas major. That's going to run down to the lower limb and be one of the major hip flexors. And as I'm scrolling back up again now, as we scroll down, we also see on the wing of the ilium, we see iliacus, the iliacus muscle here, and iliacus and psoas major are going to come together to become what gets known as iliopsoas. Both of those muscles go into the femur to become a major hip flexor, right? The other muscle then of the posterior abdominal wall is quadratus lumborum, and it's much flatter. And this is what we're seeing here, look, posterior to the kidney. So quadratus lumborum is running from the vertebrae to the iliac crest. So as we descend, there's the bone there. So if we scroll up, you can see the muscle becoming bone because the muscle is attached to the superior part of the bone. So we can also identify the major muscles here. And look, we can see nice, thick 3 layers of abdominal muscle wall here. And also on this side, so we've got the external oblique layer, the internal oblique layer, and transversus abdominis. And then anteriorly, we have rectus abdominis with the linea alba in the midline here. Look at that. This is a lean, fit young gentleman, I believe. So we can also see the abdominal wall very nicely. Pretty good. Right, we've either done better than I expected, or I've just been really enjoying scrolling through this, looking, searching and waffling. Probably the waffling. So the other thing I'd like to see would be the gallbladder. So the gallbladder nestles into the liver, right? And then that's the sort of coloration we'd be looking for a gallbladder. It's in the right place too. Oh, we can see, yeah. Anyway, right, okay, so the other things we should be looking for are small intestine and large intestine. So, as we scroll down, there's not a lot of room left in here, is there? If we scroll all the way, okay, so we know that the cecum, the start of the large intestine, is low down on the right side of the abdomen. So here we are, right side, low down, low. Right. So we can see the cecum forming here. And it's got some gas in there, it's got some air in there. And the cecum will then ascend on the right side of the abdomen as the ascending colon, and then it'll transverse across as a transverse colon. Oh, it's kind of not there. Why is that then? Well, that's because the transverse colon does often actually drape down. So we're looking at it in different sections across here. It's not as they often demonstrate in the anatomy books where you have this nice whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It's quite mobile because it's got a mesentery. So cecum we can identify, scrolling down into the pelvis, back up again. So the cecum, and then on the right side, there we go, we'd expect to see the descending colon, which will, I've gone too high, as we descend, going down, it'll become the sigmoid colon, come back towards the midline as the rectum. But we'll do the pelvis another day, right? So, cecum's good, large intestine, which means that, really, remember that everything else is the small intestine, really. Remember that the small intestine, the duodenum is retroperitoneal, so that's anchored posteriorly, and then the rest of the small intestine is has a good mesentery, so it's more free roaming, it's more mobile. So the small intestine, so I'm down there, look, I'm down at the level of the common iliac arteries. If I scroll back up again, look in here, we're seeing lots of tubes, lots of soft tissue cutting cross section. So we're seeing small bowel centrally and large bowel, to the sides, depending upon the level that we're at. All right. So if we just compare that with the model, and I rebuild this, look, see that there's the abdominal aorta splitting to the 2 common iliac arteries. It's the best way of doing this. If I put this in, cecum, which is pretty reliably there. Ascending colon, transverse colon. As I said, it's got a mesentery. Descending colon, sigmoid colon there. Pushing back again. Here's the duodenum, so it wraps around the head of the pancreas. Largely retroperitoneal, so largely stuck in place, very posterior, and then the rest of the space here is filled with small bowel. So the level we're looking at here is, well, there's the superior mesenteric artery, there's the bifurcation of the aorta, so keep that in mind, put all this back together, that's pretty much the level that we're at, all right? Transverse colon there, put the stomach on top, and then here's the liver surrounding the inferior vena cava, and the liver, if we lift it up, we see the gallbladder, and we can see the various ducts here. So that is, just trying to give you like a 3D sense of where things are. That's what we were looking at, that three-dimensional stuff. You know, it's a tricky thing to do. Looking at images a lot makes it easier. The abdomen is a lot more difficult to work out what's what than the thorax, I think. But do it yourself. Have a look at that scrollable image stack. And they have other sections as well, other directions. See if you can work out what's what. Have an atlas, an anatomy atlas on one side maybe, have radiological images on the other side, try and work out what you can see. It's a good exercise to cement stuff inside your brain. Oh, this is anterior to this, so that's posterior to that, so that's lateral to this, so then that's... Anyway, stop talking. See you next week.